Good evening, and thank you for joining us. This is the third of 5 community meetings regarding the City of Denton 2020 Mobility Plan update. I'd like to go through just a few housekeeping measures. This is the City of Denton 2020 Mobility Plan update. I have several staff members here I'd like to introduce. We have our consultant, Kurt Schulte. We have Stephanie Yates with our Public Affairs Department. Chandra, who is also in the traffic engineering. My name is Brian Yan. I'm the city traffic engineer. And we also have Rachel Wood, who, and I might get this title wrong, she's the newly appointed Deputy Director of Capital Delivery. So that's who we have on our city side. Just a few items to cover on how we're going to function tonight. We definitely want to get your feedback, and in order to do that, we are going to use the Q&A, that question and answer tab on the bottom of your screen there. So we'll ask that you type your question, and we will pause after each of the 3 major topics, the thoroughfare plan, the bike plan, and the ped plan, for questions and answers. We'll also have some Q&A at the end of the meeting, and may open up the floor for a raising hand and giving people an opportunity to speak. And at the very end, we'll talk about next steps and where this mobility plan update is headed after these meetings. So just a reminder, or just for your information, all the attendees are muted and your video is disabled. So you can see the screen that we're presenting, but you can't see other attendees, and you also can't see the questions that other people are asking. So the questions, as they're submitted, will be answered in the order in which they're submitted, even though you won't be able to see questions other than your own. So just know that if you hear us answering questions and you've got a question in and we haven't answered it, it's because there are questions in front of you. So they are answered in the order that they're received, and we will get through every question, I promise you. And then again, this presentation will be available on the City of Denton website, cityofdenton.com/mobilityplan. So each of these meetings is focused on a specific geographic area. We have done the downtown area, and we've done the northern area. Tonight's subject location is the western area, and that's this area that's blue with the yellow outline on your screen. So we can accept questions and we can talk about other areas of town, but the primary focus and the information that we will present tonight is really centered on this western area. So just a quick overview of the mobility plan update, what it is and what it isn't. It's 3 plans in 1. So this is the first true mobility plan that the City of Denton has undertaken that includes the thoroughfare plan, which is the vehicles primarily, the bicycle plan, and a new element, which we have not had before, is a pedestrian plan. So the thought process and the thinking behind rolling these into one plan is that they all connect at some point. People walk to a bus stop or they walk to a destination. All of the modes are interconnected, and it falls in line with the city's desire to move forward with a very much more complete streets oriented plan, so that we see all 3 modes plus transit on the same plan. We try to update this plan every 5 years just to keep it current. Development changes and new opportunities arise. Again, we're including the bike and ped plans. The primary focus of this mobility plan, and the thoroughfare plan in particular, is the reservation of right-of-way. We are trying to identify where we think future roadways need to be. We try to identify how big we think they need to be. And so as development occurs, we can secure that right of way, secure those infrastructure needs, and help build out our ultimate roadway and bikeway and pedestrian plan. It also positions the city to receive funding when the Texas Department of Transportation or the North Central Texas Council of Governments issues a call for projects. Having this plan in place and possibly having secured that right of way, we're in a better position to promote a specific project and secure funding from that third party. So each plan will focus on safety. That's always our number one. We looked at providing better connectivity in this plan than the 2015 plan. And again, that complete streets approach, trying to provide more multimodal options, ped, bike, transit, in addition to the historically auto-centric thoroughfare plan. So let's jump into the thoroughfare plan and its process. The starting point for all of our planning is the comprehensive plan. This gives us land use and intensities and allows us to determine where we think the population and employment centers will be and how development might occur, such that we can then secure that right of way and provide the connectivity and manage that connectivity as the city grows. Again, the land use and the demographics are really the starting point. That's the building blocks that we use to determine how much traffic, either vehicular or bike or ped, will be generated in a given area. Do we have an urban village type situation? Are we in a suburban context? Again, that land use, that comprehensive plan really dictates a lot of our starting point. So this is the kind of the nerdy engineering portion. Just a quick introduction on how we develop our thoroughfare plan and its modeling process. We divide the city, if you see this section here, we divide the city into little bitty zones. And each zone has population and employment estimates for, in this case, for a 2045 build out scenario. So we're looking at 2045 as our scenario of interest. Again, 25 years in the future, how many people will live here, how many jobs will be in place, and we divide that and we disperse that across the city. And then we turn that population number and those employment numbers into trips. So how many people will be entering a zone, how many people will be leaving a zone, either coming home or going to work, et cetera, et cetera. We distribute those trips, excuse me, on the roadway system, and we get a lot of guidance from the North Central Texas Council of Governments. They have a regional model that is much higher level, so we really drill down into the weeds when we're looking at the city of Denton, and we'll distribute those trips between the different zones and externally. So some people may live in Denton and work in Frisco, and we try to capture that. We will then determine an estimate of the mode choice. Are they going to take transit? Are they going to drive their car? Will they be on a bike? Will they be a pedestrian? And then we assign those trips onto a model, a travel forecast model that we have built that represents all of the city streets in Denton. And again, we have the ability to tie into the regional model so that we can capture regional ingress and egress as well. So a little bit about roadway classifications as we move into the description of the model and the proposed changes. We've got 4 primary categories of roadway that are depicted on the thoroughfare plan. The freeways, and you'll see those in the future slides, they'll be black lines. Those are owned and maintained by TxDOT or NTTA or some other agency that is outside the city. So typically those are high volume, high speed roadways, really intended to move a lot of traffic, and often it's a lot of through traffic. So traffic that's not necessarily associated with the city of Denton, but they certainly have to interface with people who are living and working in Denton. So if you'll think of I-35 or FM 2499, US 380, a lot of through traffic, a lot of high speed, high volume. The next category is primary arterial. This is something like a university or a carrel. Could be owned by city, could be owned by TxDOT, but it's more of a city street appeal and description rather than a freeway, than a controlled access facility. So you'll have traffic signals and you'll have intersections. You might have on-street parking. Could be 4 to 6 lanes wide, carries 25 to 50,000 cars a day. The next category is secondary arterial, and most of these are city streets, very much like the primary arterials, but a little bit lesser in magnitude. So they may not have as many lanes, could be 4 lanes. They may not travel as far. Their primary function is to feed traffic to those primary arterials. Provides more access, typically have more driveways on a secondary arterial than you would on a primary, and typically carries a little bit less traffic, 15 to 25,000 cars a day. And then the final category we have is collector, and these are the roadways that connect to residential areas and serve to feed the household traffic into the roadway network. So that's how people really get to those secondary and primary arterials and the freeways, is they start on a residential street, which we do not model typically, but their first connection will be to a collector, and then a collector to an arterial of one size or the other, and then to a freeway if they have that. 2 to 3 lanes wide, and again, significantly less traffic, 10 to 15 or less. Again, these roadways, these collectors are really intended to gather the traffic and feed that arterial network. So in this plan, in this 2020 update, we have attempted to offer ourselves flexibility in how we build different categories of roadways. So on the left-hand side of your screen, you'll see what the 2015 mobility plan included as a primary arterial. It's a 6-lane divided with bike lanes on the street and sidewalks. That was the only section that was represented. So we wanted to introduce some newer concepts of, again, that complete streets. One of the primary issues that we've tried to address is on our primary arterials. Again, those are the higher speed, higher volume roadways. We don't think that on-street bike facilities are really appropriate, so we've moved them. And you'll see this this is a proposed new build. So this is a new roadway. We've moved those bike activities to a multi-use trail or a side path, trying to eliminate the conflict of a 45-mile-an-hour vehicle and a 15-mile-an-hour bike. We also tried to build in some flexibility in our rural alternatives. Again, this is new build. This is where we have a new arterial cutting across areas where either we didn't have a roadway before, or we had a county road that we've annexed. But we want to be sensitive to the fact that we don't necessarily need 6 lanes day one. And so these options are ways that we feel that we can grow into the travel demand. Typically, if we build a connection in a rural area, we won't have the density when we open that roadway that we will in 2045. So we're just, again, trying to describe some alternatives that give us flexibility on how we ease into roadway construction. Now, this is the same the primary arterial, but this is a reconstruction. So we've got a 6-lane divided arterial. Picture this as a potential carrel. And then as we repurpose, as we rethink what that roadway can be, we wanted to offer ourselves the opportunity to maybe do some, again, lowering that intensity of travel is, and this is primarily most likely associated with some speed reduction, but taking that outside lane and putting a buffered bike lane. And the buffered bike lanes that we've been installing lately also have the vertical panels. You've seen them on Hickory. You've seen them on the section of Welch, just north of Eagle. But again, trying to introduce the flexibility of what can we do with that pavement if we don't see the growth that we anticipated. Next category of roadway is secondary arterial. again, the 2015 plan, which is what we call the existing, we have a 4-lane divided with just an on-street bike lane. And our proposal would be something similar, on-street bike lane, but buffered with a 4-lane divided. And again, that same concept of when we're in a rural alternative or rural context, we don't necessarily need all 4 lanes at the beginning. So we're going to try and ease into start with a smaller cross section and grow the roadway as the travel demand sees fit. Again, this reconstruction portion, you've got a 4-lane undivided roadway in this case. And again, the secondary arterials can take many forms. May not be a divided roadway, it may just be a 4-lane undivided roadway. But here are some ways we can use that pavement or something similar and provide different alternatives. We have a 3-lane roadway with shared bikes. We have a 3-lane roadway with on-street parking, or we can also replace that on-street parking with a buffered bike lane. Again, trying to just build in some flexibility on how we repurpose roadways and revision roadways as we reconstruct them. The last cross-section group is the collectors. And right now our model, our plan has 2 primary types of collectors. We've got a 2-lane collector and a 3-lane collector. So again, if you look on the right-hand side of your screen, we're just trying to, some of it is the same, but we've also incorporated a 2-lane with some parking opportunities, or again, this is kind of a flex zone. We're trying to, I may be overusing the word flexibility, but we're trying to build in some flexibility on how we execute different roadway cross sections. Here is a 30,000 foot look at the 2020 mobility plan update for the western section. And on the left-hand side of your screen is the 2015, and on the right-hand side is the 2020. And you'll see that we've got considerably more network. A lot of this is in concert with some of our adjoining cities and reflecting more completely what's on the Denton County thoroughfare plan. So what we'd like to do is to go through some of each of these areas, and this again is showing you some of the additional network that's really outside of the city. It's in our ETJ or in other communities, but just looking at what the total network is on the west side of the city. I'd like to go through a couple of these, and there's 8 of them, so we're going to go very quickly. Just kind of the highlights, the major changes that are occurring in this plan versus the 2015 plan. And you can see we've got Loop 288, Western Boulevard, Skiles Road, Robson Boulevard, Lively, Seawolf, Nail, and Jim Crystal. Those are the areas where we're proposing the changes. So the first one is Loop 288 West. This is a TxDOT sponsored project. We've got environmental clearance on this, so it's moving into schematic design. Just a continuation of 288 on the west side of 35. First phase will be frontage roads, and the main lanes will come on as the volume dictates. Primary difference here is this entire piece of roadway is now a controlled access facility. So we're truly building a new freeway section, western half of the loop from 35 to 35W. Next piece of roadway is Western, and it's really a combination of Western, Underwood, and John Payne. The difference you'll see here is that on the left-hand side, that left image, you've got some primary, some secondary arterial, and we have converted that entire roadway link into a primary arterial. So a lot of what you'll see on this Western plan and primarily the Western and the Southern is matching what some of the upcoming development plans are reflecting, are showing. So we're trying to be sensitive to the roadway network, this area, the Hunter Cole Ranch, what they're proposing on their roadway network, and folding that into our mobility plan. Next one is the Skiles Road, Tom Cole Road. Again, in the 2015 plan, we're showing a secondary arterial. We think the volumes are substantially increasing because of some of the, again, the connectivity. We've now got a freeway connection. This is 288 west on the right-hand side of the screen and connecting all the way to 156. We believe this is going to be a very active connection. So we're upgrading that from a secondary to a primary. And again, it does provide that connectivity to the airport. Ed Robeson Boulevard, in the 2015 plan, we had this shown as a secondary arterial, but because we've got in the 2020 plan, and we'll talk about this in a little bit, see, I think this is C Wolf that we're showing here as a primary, then we're downgrading the Robeson Boulevard to a collector and local, so that because we've got the extra carrying capacity on that roadway to the east. H. Lively Road, again, a lot of this is out in the county and in our ETJ, but 2015 plan, we're showing that as a secondary arterial. We've realigned it slightly, just straightened out some of the curves, and again, going between 35 and points west. We believe this corridor should be a primary arterial instead of a secondary, and so we're classifying it as such. C Wolf, this is the north-south arterial that in the 2015 plan was shown as a collector or secondary. We've extended the reach all the way to the south, and again, this is associated with some of the Hunter Cole development, but reclassifying that as a primary arterial just because of the estimated volumes that we think that will be generated and be attracted to that facility. Nail Road, Florence Road, again, this is pretty far west, but we've taken that from a secondary arterial to a secondary arterial, but the difference here is that we've realigned it to the west and extended it further south. So again, trying to clean up some of that, adding that connectivity that the 2015 plan did not offer. And the last one is Jim Crystal Road. We are reclassifying the eastern portion of this from primary to a secondary. If we have an issue of roadway consistency and classification consistency that we're trying to address. We had secondary arterial to the east, and then we had a piece of primary and then a secondary to the west. And so we think it's based on our volume estimates and the carrying capacity of a secondary arterial that it's appropriate just to leave it a single cross section its entire length. So with that, I will open the floor. I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to open up questions and answers on the roadway. This is the thoroughfare plan piece of the mobility plan. All right, so I'm going to go to the question and answer. And Brian Beck, will you please announce attendance figures like last time? And I think either Stephanie or Rachel can keep us posted as far as how many attendees we've got.
But 16 total attendees, 9 of which are members of the public, 7 are staff and consultants.
Okay. And if that changes, we can keep you current as well. Mark, is anybody else on the call? Yes. And I'm just going to go through that. All right. Diana Leggett, are any of these thoroughfares going to go through any of the ESAs on Hunter Cole or anywhere else? I am not an ESA specialist. I know we do. However, we do have some very strict controls on how roadways and what types of roadways can cross ESAs. So I think I can get you a better answer offline if you like. My contact information will be shared. I think it was in the invite, but it will also be shared at the end of this. And if you would like to email me that question and set up a discussion offline, we certainly can do that. We will be posting responses to all the questions after the meeting on the website. So I can also put a better, more detailed answer in that posting. Several updates to prepare to shift primary and control access facilities towards ESA regions. Again, we have pretty stringent controls on the ESAs. And I do want to say that when we look at these lines, the blue for collectors, the green for secondaries, the red for primaries, those are simply a representation of what we consider a corridor need. It is not an alignment. We have done no specific alignment studies. And so the fact that it is close to or seems to cross an ESA does not in any way infer that that ESA is in jeopardy or will be affected. Again, we have a lot of flexibility in where these roadways go relative to the plan. We can move them, I think, up to 1,000 feet one direction or another. We can add curvature. We simply, by this plan, we simply identify what we feel is a corridor, north, south, east, west, whichever, that we need to preserve in order to build the infrastructure that we think we're going to need to accommodate the travel demand. It is not at all the specific alignment. So please take that understanding away that just because the line is in a particular place on this map, that is not necessarily where that roadway is going to end up. Next question, there appears to be a high concentration of primary arterials in the western portion of the thoroughfare plan compared to the rest of Denton. Can you explain why more primary arterials are needed on this side of town compared to, say, the central part of Denton? So a lot of what is driving these roadway cross sections are the land uses that are associated. We've got a lot of industrial, a lot of large vehicle that don't tend to navigate the narrower, smaller roadways. We've got a larger load capacity, and we're trying to be responsive to again, the land use and the not only the number of trips, but the type of trips that are going to be using these roadways. Okay. I'm not sure I understand that. I would appreciate that. Thank you from Diana. All right. And then plan versus alignment in 1,000 feet, then why shift the plan at all? It creates confusion. So again, as we develop these mobility plans, one of the things that happens between 2009 and 2015 and 2015 and 2020, parcels develop. And if we've got 1 million square feet of industrial where we would like to put a road, but it wasn't on the plan at that time, then we have to rethink it. And sometimes we end up either removing roadway segments or realigning. But again, this is our best guess at this point as to where we think that roadway should go or could go. Okay, so I've got no more questions. I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next portion of the discussion, which is bike. So as part of this 2020 mobility plan update, one of the approaches that we're folding into our bike plan is the level of stress profile, and that helps us determine which are the most appropriate types of facilities to put on our roadways or adjacent to our roadways. So this is from a Federal Highways Administration document, and it shows that more than 50% of interested riders or people who responded to a survey that said, yes, I would be interested in riding my bike. More than 50% said, but I don't want a bike lane. I want something a little bit more secure and a little bit safer, either something with a buffer or a separated bike lane or a side path. So part of our approach with this 2020 update to the bike plan is to look for opportunities where we can take those bicycle facilities off street or protect them. And I'm going to use a term called an aggressive buffer. It's not just a painted buffer, but it's a buffer with some kind of a vertical device. And again, these are the things that we see on Hickory and on Welch. It will not stop a car, but the car doesn't want to hit them. The driver does not want to hit these devices. And so it keeps them in their lane, allows the bicycles to be in their lane and moving more safely. So this again is the basis, or one of the founding points for our model update. And so here let's just jump right into it. 2014 bike plan, very limited infrastructure on this side of the city. And if you look at the right-hand side, the current bike infrastructure, even less. So a lot of that is due to the nature of the land use out here. We've got a lot of industrial, we've got the airport. And so it's been a fairly slow progress, slow movement towards more of a bike-friendly area. So here's a comparison of the 2014 plan. Again, fairly limited access for bicycles versus the 2020 update, where we're starting to see some demand, and we certainly want to provide some additional infrastructure for cyclists. Now, again, this is we're reaching here into some ETJ and into some county areas. This is Ponder, so that's obviously not under the jurisdiction of the city of Denton, but we're trying to show what we think where we think the connectivity should be and what type it should be. And if you'll look, the blue is on street, and that's a bike lane, buffered lane, a shared lane, and the green is off street, so that's a trail or a side path. So you see about a 50-50 split. So again, this kind of represents that move towards serving the higher percentage of the interested riders and providing them that stress level, that comfort level, reverse, that they're looking for as they enter into their bicycle trip. So one of the other things that we're doing, the Denton Parks Department is currently in their Trails Master Plan update process, and we are trying to blend these two plans together. So you've got Parks, which is the trails primarily. The Parks Department primarily will install trails. They will also install some side paths versus this mobility plan, which truly addresses more street right-of-way and what goes into either on or adjacent to a roadway within that street right-of-way. So this is kind of a combination overlaying the two plans together. Again, a lot of this is the Hunter Cole trail system and showing how that ties into the on-street or side path system that this plan is proposing. So I'm going to stop sharing again, and we'll start talking about bike and bike issues. All right. This first question is, did the land use assumed in the model incorporate the reduction in the number of homes negotiated in the amendment to the Hunter Cole NPC, or were these roadway traffic capacity needs computed based on a pre-negotiated MC population assumption? I don't know. I can reach out to a resource here, Kurt Schulte.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Can you
Yeah,
answer?
sure. Oh, let me change my background real quick.
So while Kurt's doing that, I will say that the Hunter Cole was a moving target while they were negotiating while we were preparing this document. So I don't know if we got the final, but I'll let
Yeah.
Kurt.
We did, Brian. We got the final population employment. There was a traffic study, I think, done by another consulting firm, HDR, where they worked in pretty great detail with the developer to come up with those numbers. And then we had a meeting, two separate meetings with them to get their numbers and incorporate them into the model. So I think they're fairly reliable. And so the answer is yes, we incorporated that.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Greg.
Yep.
All right, so I have no further questions for bike, really? Really? Okay, so I'm going to start sharing again. We're going to move into the final portion, which is the pedestrian elements. So this is a draft pedestrian plan. And again, the city of Denton did not have a pedestrian plan previously. And so this is a new element in this mobility plan. It's an important element. And I think you'll see as we move through here that the amount of infrastructure that we intend to place is significant. So here are, because we didn't have a plan before, we don't have anything to compare to, but here's the existing pedestrian infrastructure. These are the existing sidewalks we've got. Again, very limited just because of the type of development that's been occurring out here. And then here's our draft pedestrian plan. Again, still thin, but significantly higher than the existing levels. You'll see the red portions, which are on the far right hand. Those are our high priority projects. And then the orange are our, and I won't call them low priority, I'm going to call them lower priority. There's no such thing as a low priority pedestrian element, but these are the sidewalks that we propose as part of this. Now, this does not include anything that's in the Hunter Cole element, that project. All of the roadways that are located in that development will be required to provide sidewalk and accessibility. So what we're seeing here is a combination of the existing and the prioritized. So, and let me go back if I can. Okay, just to discriminate between the red and the orange, we prioritize these based on adjacent land uses. Are they near a school? Are they near a transit facility? Do they have high populations of people that want to walk to the grocery store or to work? And so because we have fairly, and I'm going to qualify this with the exception of the upcoming Hunter Cole Ranch, the existing residential population on the west side is a little bit less dense than we've got. That's part of the reason why we've got some lower, the more orange than red, because it just didn't meet that highest priority threshold as we went through and calculated that demand. So again, this is the combination of the existing and the proposed. So this does show a little bit more of the ultimate roadway. These are additional sidewalk facilities, the stuff in gray, that are associated with future roadways, and that we could probably color those orange as well. But so many of these roadways are beyond the 2045, or we feel that they're beyond the 2045 threshold for construction to their ultimate section. So, and I'll take C Wolf, we're talking about a potential arterial in this north-south, but that may not happen in the next 25 years. It's dependent upon development, and these roadways will be constructed as development occurs. So until that development occurs, we won't see those pedestrian sidewalk infrastructure constructed. So I'm going to go back because there should be a question slide. I'm going to stop sharing and see if we've got any questions on the pedestrian plan. Okay. I thought we did answer the question. Let me go back to the last question. So the question was, did the land use assumed in the model incorporate the reduction in homes negotiated with the amendment to the Hunter Cole MPC? And the answer is yes. So we worked closely with their consultant, and we do have the current population employment projections associated with the current plan for the Hunter Cole. The next question is, when new roads are built, what can we expect for sidewalks? Is a sidewalk guaranteed on both sides or just one side? So new roads can be constructed in several different ways. If a development occurs on one side of a roadway, then our ability to make them build the roadway is somewhat limited. Typically, if a multifamily or single family development has a perimeter street frontage, they are required to build half of that street and the associated sidewalk. If in these master plan type projects like Hunter Cole, where the potential roadway, the future roadway bisects their property, then they're responsible for the entire roadway cross section and sidewalks on both sides. Ultimately, our goal is to have sidewalks on both sides of every roadway in town. And I've said this in the other two meetings. I cannot envision very many roadways where sidewalks are not appropriate. So but certainly our goal is to construct sidewalks on both sides of every street. How we get there is dependent upon what kind of development, and does the development front the street, or does the street bisect the development? So that's it can happen in several different ways, but you can certainly expect sidewalks at least on one side, and if they're building the entire roadway, then on both sides. Next question, are there any plans to provide bike ped access through the redesigned 35EY interchange, either to the UNT sports area or to the Bonnie Bray area? And my response is going to be yes. What that looks like, whether through that, that's a pretty tight corridor, a fairly, excuse me, fairly congested corridor, whether that ends up being a separated bike lane or a side path, we don't know. And so as we move through the design of that and the construction, we will work closely with TxDOT to ensure that we provide bicycle and pedestrian connectivity both. Okay, so I have no other questions. I'm going to give you guys a few minutes to figure out other questions, and then I'm going to offer the opportunity to raise your hand and we can just talk, and we can. All right. Can you highlight where sidewalk trails are going not adjacent to roadways? I can, but my availability is limited because I don't have the current master plan. I know they're in the process right now. They're going to the park board this week. I do not have their current thinking. We can share that with you as an attachment or a link with the responses that we post for this meeting. But if you're asking primarily if it's not adjacent to a roadway, it's going to be in park space, parkland. So anywhere that the roadways touch parkland, that's where we have the opportunity to take our either on-street or off-street bicycle facilities and join them with the parks master plan. Typically, anything that this plan is showing, representing as part of the mobility plan, is going to be something that's in a roadway right-of-way. So even our side paths that aren't on street are still in the parkway. They're between the curb and the right-of-way line. All right, so I don't see any more questions. I will open up the floor. If you want to raise your hand and make a comment or just discuss, we can do that now. All right, Brian.
Hi. So my question is, I know this western region, particularly as we head down towards the Hunter Coal and South developments are riddled with gas wells. I mean, just constantly everywhere. It seems, given the flexibility of the mobility plan and to move around, it still seems like a challenge to follow this basic concept plan without running afoul of building over top of gas wells. So can you talk about how you approach that and do that, and not only roadways and side paths adjacent to roadways over or near and through gas well mazes, but also one of the big selling points of Hunter Coal in particular, some of the other developments was these trails, these sidewalk trails as part of parks that gave them green space credit for gas wells. Yet you will still be having to build side paths, even though these will be trails on top of gas wells or near them. Can you go into that a little bit?
I can try. I'm not sure. I was losing a little bit of the audio. So relative to the gas wells, some of the alignment changes that you see potentially are due to gas well locations, but the roadways don't have the restrictions that structures have as far as how close we can get to a gas well. So a roadway can get relatively close to an existing or capped gas well, an abandoned gas well, and not pose an issue. So we've got a little bit more flexibility. I know, just as a side, the Loop 9, the outer loop, which has been planned for 30 plus years, is currently in the planning stages in its alignment studies. Now stops, it terminates at 35 because you can't get a freeway or a large cross-section roadway on the west side of 35. There's simply too many gas wells. But with some of these lower category roadways, even the primary arterials, we've got the ability with centerline radius. We can weave in and out a little bit more nimbly than on a freeway, and so that's part of the 288. That freeway is definitely, that alignment will be established by where the gas wells are. And if you could repeat the second half about the trails and I missed
some of these regions, the Hunter Coal and the other ranches in the Southwest there. I know you can't build structures adjacent to gas wells, but they were getting green space and park credit for the green space and selling that as a trail system. And again, I guess that's the same question you may have just answered, and that is, are you able to build the trails that were being proposed in through these gas well developments? I mean, you can't. Some of them will stay in production. So I'm curious how one develops one's mobility plan for the trail system as part of the park system, in conjunction with the limits from the gas wells that will be part of the park system. I know that's a little, you sort of answered it, but it feels like you're allowing usage to get closer than maybe is really practical, at least through some of these areas. And I'm not sure that's a mobility plan issue, but it's definitely a development issue. So I guess with that comment, I'll let you respond or whatever, but I guess that was more of a comment than a question.
Okay, and I think I understand. And those regulations are established based on the type of use. So a roadway or a trail system is considered a transient use versus a single family house or a business where that's a permanent use that it doesn't move. And so the offset requirements are established not by the city, and we can enhance them, but there are very clear regulations on how close we can get. And it may seem uncomfortably close, but we work within those regulations as we identify roadway locations, trail locations, et cetera. So, I mean, we're working within the framework of what's allowable. And I know the city of Denton has extended some offset requirements. So, I mean, that, again, we have the authority to extend. We can't shorten them, but we are working. This plan is based on a within the reason, within reason and the specificity that it provides. We are sensitive to how close the roadways and the trails can get to those existing gas wells. So I'm not the expert on why or whether we can get open space credits for a gas well site, just because it's not developed as something else, but possibly we can research that and again, insert a better, more complete answer before we post the responses to this. So let me offer that, is that I'll talk with Gary and some of the Hunter Cole people and our attorneys and say, are we within our are we playing in bounds here as we show these roadways and these bike and ped facilities adjacent to gas wells?
Thank you.
Be okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions or comments? All right. Well, again, and I'm going to go back to my screen share. So just in closing, our next steps, this is meeting 3 of 5. We've got one on the 17th and one on the 24th, talking about the eastern and southern areas respectively. Everyone's welcome, and we would love for you to come out and join us and ask questions and give us your feedback on those 2 remaining areas of town. We will take this feedback, roll it into a final plan, which we hope to roll out sometime in November. And once we have incorporated the public comments with the city council comments that we received earlier this year, we will again finalize that plan and roll that out for council adoption either late this year or early next year. So between now and then, please, as it says here, please stay connected. My contact information is there. My email, I believe, was in the invite or in the registration form. cityofdenton.com/mobility plan. Please visit that. There's an interactive map that allows you to make comments. Again, please attend the future meetings. We've got 2 more, one Thursday and one next week. And then the website also shares information. We'll have more current information on timeline, et cetera. And the question and answer of all of the meetings will be published on the website. So the meeting on the 9th, which was downtown, and the meeting on the 10th, which was the northern area, those Q&A sessions, the questions and responses, if they're not already posted, will be posted the next day or so. We will go through and prepare the responses in a written format for this meeting and post them as well. And so if you've got a question, please feel free to email me or call me.
Right, there's 2 more questions.
All right, I'm
came up.
coming back. We'll always get back.
All right.
So just again, website, cityofdenton.com, mobility plan. It's got areas for feedback, or you can reach out to staff as well. So I'm going to stop sharing and then go to questions. How early do you update public maps from information you receive from other stakeholders, state, county, et cetera? So if I understand this question, so when TxDOT updates their map, if they've got an alignment change, if the question, and Brian, if you could just type in a yes or no, is your question, how quickly do we update our map to reflect the changes that say TxDOT may make or COG may make. So before I answer, if you just type a yes or a no, I appreciate that. Okay. So typically the official maps are updated on that 5-year cycle. If an alternative, or not alternative, if an external agency adjusts their policy map, we can do a couple of different things. One, we can simply acknowledge that their map governs. If it's TxDOT and it's their facility, we don't govern TxDOT facilities, and so our mobility plan is subject to their overall system plan. If it is the county and they change a cross-section or a roadway alignment, then we can either acknowledge that change, or we can go through a thoroughfare plan amendment process that would be staff initiated and reflect that change, or we can simply wait, again, acknowledge the change and follow its guidance and incorporate that change in the official policy map the next update cycle. So there's a couple different ways, and it really depends on which agency is making a change, and are they making a change that's potentially under our jurisdiction or that affects a roadway that is under our jurisdiction. So not necessarily a simple TxDOT changes their map, so we change ours. A lot of times the changes will be adopted by an external agency, and our map will not reflect that change until we do the next update cycle. So are you and or the consultants still reviewing public comments on the interactive map as new comments come in? Yes, and we continue to encourage people to visit that website. In fact, I think Mr. Beck had the question, how do we want to receive feedback, whether it be email or the map? And my response is that's completely up to you as a commenter. If you're comfortable using the map, yes, our consultant is still receiving that information that way, or you can reach out through an email to either me or one of the other staff members that are listed on that invite. Okay. No hands up, no questions. I'll give you a little bit more time. It seems like every time I try and close the meeting, somebody comes with a question. So it's, and we're here for, that's exactly why we're here, is to get your feedback. So I definitely want to give you enough opportunity, ample opportunity to ask you questions. All right. Well, going once, going twice. Again, thank you everyone for participating tonight. And please feel free to join us on the 17th and the 24th to talk about the last 2 sections of town. We really, really need your feedback and appreciate all the time and effort you spent in getting that to us. So again, thank you so much and good night.